He raised his glass and smiled. The kind of smile people use to hide cruelty. "To Riley," Walter said. "May she finally have a stable family. Something her sister could never give her." Laughter rippled through the ballroom. I didn't laugh. My name is Clorinda Pemberton, and the man humiliating me in front of 200 guests was about to find out what it costs to bury the truth. For 20 years, I carried the silence of a collapsed mine and the weight of parents who never came home. Today, the ground beneath his feet was about to crack. The ballroom shimmered under the glass roof, every chandelier glinting with reflections of snow from the mountains outside. Laughter drifted through the air, polished and hollow, like the kind that belonged to people who had never known loss. The jazz band played something light, meant to fill the pauses between empty compliments. I sat at the farthest table, half hidden behind crystal centerpieces and candlelight, watching my sister shine in her white gown. Riley's smile trembled slightly, a flicker of nerves no one else noticed. At the head table, Walter Harrington stood, all charm and command, his glass raised as if to bless the world. "Here's to Riley," he said, his voice cutting through the room. "A lovely young woman who will finally have a stable family, something she clearly never had growing up." A ripple of uneasy laughter followed. Someone clinked a glass too loudly. Someone else cleared their throat. Riley froze, her hand gripping the edge of the tablecloth. I didn't move. My eyes followed the glint of red wine swirling in his glass. It caught the chandelier light like blood. When I rose, chairs creaked around me. "Mr. Harrington," I said softly, "do you even know what stability costs?" Silence swallowed the room. Walter blinked, the smirk faltering just slightly before returning. "Ah," he murmured. "The sister speaks." I smiled. Not at him, but at Riley, her eyes full of fear and something she was desperate to hide. I sat again, calm as stone. He thinks this is about pride, I thought, but this is about foundation, and his is about to crack. Somewhere in the distance, a phone buzzed. Walter reached into his pocket, frowning. A single notification glowed on the screen. Denver Daily Investigations. Harrington Mining. Investigation reopened. My smile didn't fade. It simply deepened. Quiet. Certain. Inevitable. The night the mine collapsed still claws at my memory. The sirens. The shouting. The smell of coal and dust cutting through the winter air. I was 17, standing behind the chain-link fence. My hands frozen against the metal while ambulances wailed into the dark. They said no one was left inside, but I knew my parents hadn't made it out. Someone shouted from the pit, "The roof gave in, the beams weren't reinforced." But the next morning, the headline told a prettier story. "Natural quake causes tragic accident." I walked into the Harrington mining office with the article still folded in my hand. A man behind the desk didn't even look up. "You should move on, kid," he said. "Harrington paid enough." He didn't see me snatch the report off his desk. The ink was faint, but one line burned through the page. "Approved for cost reduction, W. Harrington." That was the day I stopped believing in accidents. Years passed in fragments, steel dust, concrete, the sound of drills, and my sister's laughter echoing in a cheap apartment. I built bridges by day and raised Riley by night, feeding her on noodles and borrowed dreams. She learned to draw and dream. I learned to stop. Now the photo of our parents sits on my desk, light flickering across their faces like fire trapped behind glass. "If he built his empire on broken beams," I whisper, "I'll be the one to bring it down." My phone buzzes. Riley's message glows bright against the dark screen. "Claire," Derek proposed, "you'll love his family." My hand tightens until my palm stings. She doesn't know. She's marrying the son of the man who killed our parents. The Harrington estate gleamed like something made to impress. All glass walls and vineyard views. The air smelled of polished wealth, sweet and sterile. At the center of it all sat Walter Harrington, his confidence as heavy as the gold watch on his wrist. He studied me with that slow, assessing look people use when they've already decided you don't belong. A civil engineer, you said? He asked, swirling his wine. So you build things that eventually collapse? I met his eyes. Only when people remove the supports. His smile froze, then returned, thinner this time. We both knew what I meant. On the wall behind him hung a framed family portrait. Walter, his wife, Derek, and, behind them, the same mountain ridge where the mine had caved in. The chandelier's reflection cut across the photo, a streak of light splitting the image like a fracture in glass. He'd put it there on purpose, a silent declaration, I won. Dinner carried on, conversations polite but sharp. When it ended, I stepped out into the cold. Derek followed, hands buried in his coat pockets. He's hard to deal with, he said quietly. But he's not all bad. I turned toward him. You've never seen the beams from the inside, have you? I left him standing there, the glow from the house spilling onto the snow like cracks spreading from a broken foundation. Back home, I opened my laptop. The screen lit the dark room, lines of text scrolling fast until one file caught my eye. Site report, Rocky Ridge Extension, a new site, a new sin. 2 weeks before the wedding, my office lights hummed against the dark. The Rocky Ridge Extension blueprint glowed on the screen. Load bearing compromised. Reinforcement skipped. Supervisor approval, W. Harrington, I sent it to Lennox. His reply came fast. If this checks out, it's homicide. That afternoon, Riley called in tears. Why did you tell a reporter about Dad's company? Who told you that? Derek heard rumors. You're trying to ruin him. I'm not ruining anyone, I said. I'm rebuilding what they broke. She hung up. The silence left a crater between us. Hours later, Lennox's email came. Follow the money. $3.2 million vanished from an environmental fund to a Bahamian account. They died for $3 million. I whispered to my parents' photo. That night, an envelope waited under my door. A map of a new mine. Red zones marked unsafe. Scrawled beneath, he's doing it again. I found Riley later, forcing a smile. Mr. Harrington's paying for our honeymoon. Then he's buying your silence. The light fractured through the glass door as she shut it. Back home, I traced in red ink. Stress point, glass point, failure line. Below, I wrote W, H. The cracks had formed. A week later, Riley twirled in her wedding gown. You'll look perfect, Derek said. My phone buzzed. SEC confirms investigation, I murmured. Right on schedule. That night, Derek came by. If you know something about my father, tell me. Would you still marry someone who profits from the dead? He said nothing. The next morning, Riley confronted me. You're obsessed. You can't let it go. Time doesn't bury truth, I said. It exposes what wasn't built right. Then Lennox called. Walter knows. Then he's looking in the wrong place, I replied. Later, Mark Dalton whispered. He's laundering through Riley's name. My stomach dropped. I wrote in my journal. If I stop now, he wins. If I continue, she suffers. Justice always breaks something. Snow fell. I texted Lennox. Wedding day, 2:15 p.m. When he toasts. Before dawn. I left my father's pencil beside Riley's bed, engraved Build to Last. You don't know it yet, I whispered. But this time, I'm building for both of us. 3 days before the wedding, I drove to the outskirts of Denver and stood before the old Harrington mine. The air was damp and bitter, filled with the smell of rust and earth. Cracked walls, metal beams eaten by time. Everything looked the same as it had that night, except quieter. I ran my fingers over a faint engraving, still clinging to the stone. Safety first. You forgot your own words. Walter, I whispered. Back at my apartment, my desk had turned into a war map. Blueprints, schedules, lines connecting faces, accounts, and dates. Every piece fit together like steel under tension. My laptop screen glowed as Lennox's face appeared on a video call. Are you sure about the timing? He'll raise his glass at 2:15, I said. Make sure the world is watching. At that same hour, an anonymous email arrived in Walter's inbox. SEC knows. Within minutes, his office turned into a storm. He ordered a full systems audit, digging through old servers, including the one I'd once used. He found nothing. I'd erased every trace years ago. The evidence now lived only where no one could delete it. That evening, Riley came to my door. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Derek says the company's in trouble. He said it's you. Please, Claire, if you love me, stop. I can't stop what started 20 years ago. You'll destroy us. No, Riley, I'm rebuilding what was destroyed. She stared at me, frightened, realizing she no longer recognized the sister who'd raised her. The next morning, I sent Walter a wedding gift, an elegant silver frame holding a photograph of the collapsed mine. But behind the glossy surface, faintly visible, was an overlay of his offshore transfers to the Bahamas. On the back, I'd engraved one line, "Foundations don't lie." The hidden lens inside the frame would capture his face when he opened it. That afternoon, he summoned me to a downtown cafe. "You think you can fight me with paper?" he said, voice low, eyes sharp. "I bury people with paper." "Not this time," I replied evenly. "This time, the paper signs your fall." His smile turned cold. "When foundations collapse, everything above goes with them, even your sister." He left. I sat alone, the wind pushing dust through the open door, like the faint crumble of rock before a cave-in. Minutes later, Lennox called. "Claire, someone sold our timeline. Another outlet's about to publish early." "Then move it up," I said. "He'll make his toast at 1:45. Adjust the clock." Only I knew the new schedule. That night, I unlocked my father's old safe, laying his drafting pencil beside the faded construction permit for the Harrington mine. On the last page of my notebook, I wrote, "Blueprint of justice, cracks aligned, collapse imminent." The lamplight caught the edges of the drawing, spreading across the page like sunlight on stone. The foundation was ready to fall. Snow drifted like ash beyond the balcony rail as I sat with my phone in hand. The message from Lennox blinked across the screen. "Files scheduled. Countdown starts at 13:45 tomorrow." I typed back, "When he raises his glass. The world will know." The snow melted in my palm before I wiped it away. A soft knock at the door. Riley stood there in her silk robe, her face pale and restless. "I can't sleep. Dad's worried. Derek's scared. Tell me this is all just a misunderstanding." "It's not," I said gently. "Tomorrow isn't about hate, it's about truth." "But truth hurts." "So does every reconstruction." Her lip trembled, but she said nothing more. She turned and left, closing the door between us for what we both knew would be the last time. Across the hall, Walter sat in his suite, voice hard as he spoke into the phone. "There's talk of an SEC alert. Sir, should we cancel the ceremony?" "No," he answered. "Tomorrow, I'll make my toast and remind them who owns the ground they stand on." He wired money to silence a journalist, unaware that the files had already moved to international servers. Around midnight, Derek found the folder his father had hidden in the study. Inside were forged signatures, his and Riley's, used to authorize illegal transfers. He stared at the pages, stunned. He used me. He used her. He came to my door, knocking softly. "He's laundering through us," he said. "You were right." "Then tomorrow," I told him, "stay silent. Let the ground collapse." When he left, I went to the bathroom and met my own reflection in the mirror. Pale, sleepless eyes, hair falling over my face. I was 17 when the ground fell once," I murmured. "Tomorrow, I'll make sure it's the last time it ever does." A flash of lightning split the sky. The mirror trembled in its frame, fractured by the sound. Before dawn, I found a folded note slipped under my door. Riley's handwriting. "Whatever happens tomorrow, please don't forget I love you. I didn't cry. I folded the note carefully and tucked it into my coat pocket. When morning came, the snow had stopped. Sunlight spread across the mountain peaks, clean and blinding. On the table beside me sat a single glass of red wine, still untouched. I lifted it slightly, whispering, "For you, Mom. For you, Dad. For truth." Somewhere in the valley below, church bells began to ring. The sound of a wedding, or a warning. The ballroom in Aspen gleamed white and perfect, sunlight bouncing off glass and marble. Guests laughed softly, cameras flashed, violins sang through the air. Only I sat still, my glass untouched, waiting for 1:45. Walter straightened his tie, lifted his wine, and smiled at the crowd. "To Riley and Derek, may your marriage stand stronger than some foundations we've seen before." Laughter rippled like static. Riley's shoulders stiffened. I rose slowly. The light caught my silver dress as I said, calm and clear, "You talk about foundations, Mr. Harrington. But do you even know what keeps the ground stable?" He smirked. "An engineer's lesson, is it?" I set my glass down hard. "You built your empire on hollow ground. I'm here to make sure it collapses." His phone buzzed, his face drained of color. Behind him, the wedding screen flickered, now flashing headlines. Harrington Mining under federal investigation. Documents, transfers, signatures. His crimes laid bare. "You used my name for this?" Derek shouted. Walter said nothing. Riley sobbed. I stepped forward. "My parents died because you chose profit over safety. Today, truth weighs more than your gold." "Walk away, Riley," I told her softly. She took Derek's hand, and they left. The room fell silent. Walter slumped, wine spilling like blood across white linen. As I walked past, the cameras clicked. By morning, that photo would tell the whole story. Rain traced thin silver lines across the window. The city outside blurred beneath the storm. The TV murmured in the background until a familiar name cut through the static. Walter Harrington, detained by federal authorities following the release of incriminating evidence. The SEC and FBI confirm multiple accounts under investigation. I turned it off. Silence filled the room, soft but heavy. On the table sat my father's old drafting pencil, its metal edges worn smooth. "They finally saw what you saw. Dad," I whispered. The front door burst open. Riley stood there, eyes swollen, breath shaking. "You destroyed my husband's family! You humiliated us!" "No, Riley," I said quietly. "I stopped pretending your happiness wasn't built on lies." She threw a newspaper onto the table. Walter in handcuffs stared back at us. "You could have told me." "Would you have listened?" We looked at each other, and in that silence, love and grief wrestled until neither could win. My phone rang. Lennox's voice came through, steady. "It's done. The trust's been reinstated. The company will rebuild under a new name, Pemberton Memorial Fund. Then the ground finally holds," I said. Later, a message blinked on my screen. "I finally understand. You didn't destroy us. You rebuilt us. Thank you for giving me something solid to stand on." I smiled, small, quiet. The first one since the mine collapsed. Stepping onto the balcony, I watched the rain ease, the city lights glinting through glass. Justice doesn't roar. It settles. Quietly. Like the earth after a quake. A year later, the old mine had become a sanctuary. Wild grass covered what once was rubble, and a marble monument now stood in its place. Pemberton Memorial Trust, built from truth. I knelt before it, laying a bundle of white lilies on the stone. The wind was soft. The air smelled of new earth. Pulling my father's drafting pencil from my pocket, I etched a small line beneath the engraving. "Build to last." Birdsong carried through the quiet valley. Lennox's footsteps approached behind me. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "No," I said, still looking at the stone. You can't rebuild without breaking first. He handed me an envelope. Riley wanted you to have this. Inside, her handwriting flowed steady and sure. I'm naming our first daughter Clara, after you. I want her to know what true foundation means. My eyes stung. I folded the letter gently, whispering, "Then the name will stand strong." As I walked away, the sunrise spilled gold over the mountains. The snow melted, water tracing clean paths through the soil. Earth reborn. They called it revenge. I called it restoration.
I found a GPS tracker under my truck while changing oil. Professional installation. Still warm, meaning someone had just put it there. At 70 years old, why would anyone need to track me? To find the truth, I mailed that tracker to Canada. I didn't tell anyone. I just waited, watched, listened. 12 hours later, my son's phone started ringing nonstop. His face went white, and that's when I knew who'd put it there. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment below. Where are you watching this from, and what time is it there right now? I want to know how far this story's reaching. The Saturday morning oil change was a ritual I'd kept for 40 years. Same time, same routine. Slide the creeper under the F-150 drain, the old oil replace the filter, fill it back up. My joints complained more than they used to, but I could still do the work myself. Always had, always would. That's when my hand hit something that shouldn't have been there. I stopped. Felt around the undercarriage again, this time paying attention. My fingers found metal, smooth and foreign, not part of the truck. I grabbed the flashlight from my toolbox and rolled back under. The beam caught it immediately. A black box about the size of a deck of cards magnetically attached to the frame. A tiny LED blinked red in the darkness. Professional installation. Industrial-grade magnet. This wasn't some cheap toy from the electronics store. I'd been a mechanical engineer for 4 decades before I retired. I knew equipment. This was expensive. $300, maybe $400. And it was still warm to the touch. Not warm from the Montana sun, it was barely 60 degrees out here in October. Warm from recent use. Someone had installed this thing recently. Very recently. I didn't rip it off. That would have been stupid. Instead, I took photos from every angle with my phone. Close-ups of the serial number stamped on the side. Wide shots showing exactly where it was mounted. I documented everything the way I'd been trained to document mechanical failures back in my engineering days. Then I grabbed a paper towel from the workbench, carefully wiped my prints off the device, and removed it. The magnet released with a soft click. I wrapped it in a Ziploc bag and carried it inside, leaving the oil change half finished. At my kitchen table, I stared at the thing through the plastic. GPS tracker. Had to be. But who would put a tracker on a 70-year-old man's truck? I mentally ran through the list. Only 3 people had been in my garage this past week. Jim, my neighbor, 2 plots down. 75 years old, barely knew how to use his flip phone. No way Jim installed something like this. The propane delivery guy who'd filled my tank on Monday. But he was a stranger, didn't know me, had no reason to track some random customer. And Dylan, my son, who'd stopped by Tuesday afternoon, supposedly to check on the horses. I sat back in my chair thinking. Dylan had spent 15 minutes in the garage alone. Said he was checking the tire pressure on my truck, being helpful, making sure the old man's vehicle was safe. Except Dylan had never cared about those horses, not once in 35 years, and checking tire pressure doesn't take 15 minutes. My engineer's mind started putting pieces together. The warmth of the device meant it was active transmitting. Someone was watching where I went. Someone who needed professional equipment to do it. I looked at my phone at Dylan's number in my contacts. My thumb hovered over it. No, I'd learned something in 40 years of solving mechanical problems. Never jump to conclusions without data. Test your hypothesis first. Observe the system. See what breaks when you apply pressure. I opened the drawer in my kitchen desk and dropped the Ziploc bag inside. The truck would stay in the garage. I wouldn't drive anywhere. And I'd wait to see who asked questions. If someone was tracking me, they were about to get very confused about why I'd suddenly stopped moving. I closed the drawer and looked out the window at my quiet ranch. 3 people had keys to my garage. Only one of them knew trucks well enough to install a tracker properly. My son. I didn't call Dylan, didn't confront him. I did what I'd learned in 40 years of engineering, test the hypothesis before drawing conclusions. Sunday morning came quiet. I fed the horses, mended fence, cleaned the barn. Normal weekend work. The F-150 sat in the garage untouched. The tracker sat in my desk drawer, silent. My phone never rang. Monday I stayed close to the house. Repaired the porch railing, organized the tool shed, made chili that would last the week. Still no reason to drive. The truck stayed put. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Dylan. Hey, Dad, just checking in. His voice had that casual tone people use when they're trying too hard to sound casual. I'm fine, I said. Waivuba, no reason. Haven't heard from you. Your truck running okay? There it was. Not, how are you feeling? He asked about the truck. Actually, I'm having transmission trouble, I said. Keeping it in the garage for now. His voice shifted, got tighter. What's wrong exactly? Where are you taking it? How long will it take? 3 questions in 5 seconds. That wasn't concern. That was panic barely controlled. Just some slipping between gears. Probably needs new fluid. I'll get to it when I get to it. But why are you asking so many questions about my truck? Silence on his end. Then I just want to make sure you're safe. At your age, car trouble can be dangerous. I'm 70, Dylan. Not dead. I hung up. Dylan didn't call to check on me. He called to check on the truck, which meant he was watching it. Tuesday morning, I was pulling weeds when the phone rang again. Dad, hey. Dylan sounded breathless. I was thinking maybe I could visit this weekend. Sure, I said, but the truck's still not fixed. You're sure it's just the transmission? His voice went up half an octave. Nothing else wrong with the truck? I stopped pulling weeds. That was too specific. What else would be wrong with it? He stammered. I don't know, just making sure. Old vehicles can have multiple problems. It's fine, Dylan, just the transmission. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table. 2 calls in 3 days. Dylan normally called once a month, if that, and both times he'd asked about the truck. Not about me, not about the ranch. The truck. I opened the desk drawer and looked at the Ziploc bag. The tracker's LED still blinked, read patient and persistent. My engineer's brain started connecting dots. 6 months ago, Dylan had helped me set up Wi-Fi. Insisted on doing it himself. 3 months ago, he'd fixed my laptop when it was running slow. Spent an hour alone with it. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern. Dylan hadn't been helping me. He'd been preparing for what I didn't know yet. But the tracker wasn't about keeping me safe. If it were, he wouldn't be panicking when I stayed home. This was about control, about knowing where I was at all times. Tuesday night, I sat in the dark and thought about my son, about the boy who'd learned to change oil beside me in this garage, who'd grown into a man I apparently didn't know anymore. If Dylan was this desperate to track my movements, there had to be a reason, something that made him willing to lie to his own father. I needed to know how far he'd go. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Ray Fletcher, long-haul trucker old friend, and a man who asked no questions. Time to give Dylan something to really worry about. Ray Fletcher answered on the second ring. His voice was rough, from 35 years of diesel fumes and truck stop coffee. Frank, you know what time it is. 6 a.m. and I need a favor. Must be important if you're calling this early. Can you get something to Winnipeg for me? Silence, then a low chuckle. What kind of something? The kind you don't ask about. 20 minutes later, I met Ray at the I-90 truck stop just outside Bozeman. The Montana morning was cold fog, still clinging to the asphalt. His rig sat idling, engine rumbling like distant thunder. I handed him a small box, the tracker wrapped in bubble wrap and sealed with tape. No return address, no labels. What's in it? Ray asked, turning it over in his thick hands. Nothing dangerous, nothing illegal. Just needs to get to Winnipeg. Don't open it. Don't let Border Patrol scan it if you can help it. Ray looked at me for a long moment. We'd known each other 20 years. Fixed each other's vehicles, shared beers at the 4th of July barbecue, buried our wives within 2 years of each other. He knew I wouldn't ask unless it mattered. You're a weird old man, Morrison. I know. This gonna come back on me? No. He nodded, tucked the box behind his seat. I'll text when I cross the border. His truck pulled away, north red taillights disappearing into the fog. I watched until I couldn't see them anymore, then drove home. The waiting was the hard part. I fed the horses, checked the fence line, made myself a sandwich. I didn't eat. Kept my phone in my pocket, volume turned all the way up. 2 p.m. Nothing. 5 p.m. Still nothing. At 7, my phone buzzed. Text from Ray. Cross border. Package delivered to your friend. I typed back, thanks, I owe you. 8 p.m. I was washing dinner dishes when my phone rang. Dylan. Hey, Dad, how's it going? Too cheerful. Forced. Making dinner, I said. You. Just checking in. You home. Where else would I be? Right. Truck still broken. Still working on it. So you're at the ranch, not driving anywhere? I set down the dish towel slowly. Dylan, what's this about? Nothing, just making sure you're okay. His voice was tight, stretched thin like wire about to snap. 9 p.m. The phone rang again. Dad, where are you? Not a greeting, a demand, raw panic. I'm at home, where I've been all day. Why are you yelling, your truck? Are you sure you're at the ranch? Son, are you drunk? In the background, Brittany's voice cut through sharp as glass. Give me the phone. No, let me... Dylan muffled, arguing with her. Dylan, what the hell is going on? His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Dad, we need to talk. In person. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. It's important. Really important. Don't go anywhere tonight, okay? Just stay home. I'm 70 years old. Where would I go? After I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. Dylan hadn't asked if I was okay. He'd asked where I was, which meant he had the tracking app on his phone right now. Watching. Seeing his father's truck make an impossible journey 1,500 miles north across the Canadian border. My son had been watching my every move, and now that he'd lost me, he was terrified. Good, let him sweat. Tomorrow I'd find out what else he'd been doing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something Dylan said kept bothering me. Are you sure you're at the ranch? How would he know if I wasn't? The tracker was in Canada, unless there was another way he'd been watching me. At 1 a.m., I walked to my office. The laptop sat on my desk. Dylan had helped me set up Wi-Fi 6 months ago, insisted on doing it himself, and he'd fixed it 3 times when it ran slow. I opened Task Manager. Dylan had taught me that, once ironically. I scanned the running processes. Most I recognized. But one stood out, Remote Access Service.exe. I stared at it for a full minute. I almost Googled it on the laptop, then stopped. If someone was watching my screen, they'd know I'd found it. I pulled out my phone and searched there. The results made my hands shake. Remote desktop software allows someone to view your screen, access files, control your computer from anywhere. I checked when it was installed, 6 months ago, the exact day Dylan had helped with Wi-Fi. I dug deeper into the file access logs. Recent files accessed remotely, bank statements, legal documents, emails, property deed, all accessed when I wasn't home. Someone had been reading everything, my accounts, my passwords, my entire financial life. I wanted to uninstall it immediately. But if Dylan was watching, he'd know I'd discovered it. Better to leave it. Let him think he still had access. I closed the laptop carefully and sat in the dark. Tracker plus spyware. Location and finances. Why would my son need both? At 2 a.m., I walked to Jim's house and knocked quietly. He answered in his bathrobe, squinting. Frank, what's wrong? Can I use your computer? Mine's acting up. At 2 in the morning. Please, Jim. He stepped aside without another word. Good neighbors don't ask questions they don't want answered. I sat at his old desktop and started searching. Remote Access Software Illegal. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Federal crime. Up to 10 years in prison. Then I searched for the tracker's model number from my photos. Found the manufacturer's website, read the product description. My blood went cold. Advanced Vehicle Control System, Remote Engine Shutoff, Brake Control, Full ECU Integration. Remote Engine Shutoff, not just tracking, control. I searched Remote Engine Shutoff while driving and found videos. One headline, Kill Switch Devices, the New Murder Weapon. I clicked play. A car driving highway speed, 65 miles per hour, then suddenly engine cut. Brakes locked. The car spun out of control and slammed into the guardrail. Test track, professional drivers, safety equipment. But the message was clear. On a real highway, the driver wouldn't survive. I sat back, numb. Dylan hadn't just been watching me. He'd installed a weapon on my truck. He could kill me with a button press on his phone. While I was driving to town, on the highway, anywhere. I thanked Jim and walked home through the cold Montana darkness. My son had the ability to murder me remotely. One button, one moment, dead. The question wasn't if anymore. The question was why. At 6 a.m. Thursday, I made 2 calls. First to Robert Mitchell, who'd handled my wife's will 10 years ago. Second to Chuck Morrison at the auto shop. By noon, I'd know if I was paranoid, or if my son was really trying to kill me. Mitchell's office was downtown 3rd floor of an old brick building. I arrived at 9 with a USB drive full of screenshots from Jim's computer, photos of the tracker, evidence of the spyware. Frank, Mitchell stood from his desk, concern already on his face. What's wrong? I handed him the USB drive. He plugged it in, clicked through the files. His expression darkened with each image. This is surveillance without consent. Potentially a felony. There's more, I said. I think someone tried to file power of attorney under my name. Mitchell's fingers went still on the keyboard. You think, or you know. I need you to check. He turned to his computer, accessed Montana state records. 5 minutes of typing, then he looked up at me. Frank, sit down. I was already sitting. 2 weeks ago, someone submitted a durable power of attorney with your signature. The notary office flagged it. The ID looked suspicious. I tried calling you, but I was at the fishing cabin. No cell service for 4 days. He nodded, turned his screen toward me. The signature looked 95% real, almost perfect. If I hadn't caught it, Dylan would have legal control over everything. Your ranch, your pension, your medical decisions, everything. How would he get my signature? The spyware. He could scan old documents, manipulate images. Mitchell paused. Frank, he can try again, and next time he'll be more careful. He pulled another file from his drawer. 3 days ago, someone used your property as collateral for a loan. The room tilted slightly. That's impossible. The ranch has been paid off for 12 years. I know. The title company flagged it and called me. Someone forged your signature on a loan application. $340,000. The number hit me like a fist. Who would lend that much? It's not a legitimate lender. It's a loan shark operation disguised as an investment firm. High interest, violent collection methods. When people don't pay, he didn't finish. Dylan owes them, Mitchell nodded. A lot. And he used your ranch without your knowledge. If he'd gotten power of attorney first, it would have been legal. At 11, I drove to Chuck's auto shop with the tracker photos. The garage smelled like oil and burnt rubber. Chuck took one look at the pictures and his face went hard. Where'd you find this? Under my F-150. He led me to his office, typed the model number into his computer. Frank, this isn't just GPS. This is a kill switch device. He explained connects to the engine control unit, can remotely cut fuel, disable the engine lock, the brakes. He pulled up a video. A car driving 60 miles per hour. Then suddenly, engine dead brakes locked the car spinning out of control. Highway speed. You'd die. Can you trace who bought it? No. Dark web. Untraceable. But whoever installed it had physical access to your truck and knew what they were doing. He looked at me seriously. Frank, this is attempted murder. You need to call the police. I drove home slowly, checking every car in my mirrors. Dylan had 340,000 reasons to kill me. He had the tools to do it. And according to Mitchell, the loan sharks would come calling in 2 weeks. That was 12 days ago. I had 48 hours left. I didn't sleep Thursday night, either. Instead, I sat with a cup of cold coffee and a phone number I hadn't called in 15 years. Mike Patterson, retired detective. The only man I trusted to dig into my son's life without judgment. At 2 a.m., I opened my notebook and wrote out a timeline. 6 months ago, spyware installed. 2 weeks ago, power of attorney attempt. 1 week ago, tracker installed. 3 days ago, loan application. The pattern was clear, escalating preparation. I picked up the phone and dialed. Mike answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. This better be good. It's 2 a.m. Mike, it's Frank Morrison. Silence. Then his voice cleared. Frank, what's wrong? I need you to look into someone. My son. A long pause. Mike knew I wouldn't ask unless it was desperate. What do you need? Everything. His finances. Who he owes. What he's been doing. By tomorrow. That's a tall order. I'll pay triple your rate. Frank, I don't need your money. If you're calling about your kid at 2 a.m., it's bad enough. Give me 4 hours. At 6, my phone rang. Frank, sit down. I was already sitting. Your son is drowning. Borrowed $340,000 from a firm called Apex Investment Solutions. The loan sharks Mitchell mentioned. Worse, They're under FBI investigation, money laundering front. When people don't pay, they disappear. My blood went cold. How much time does he have? They gave him 2 weeks. That was 12 days ago. In 2 days, they'll come to collect. They'll take the ranch, with or without you on it. Mike paused. Frank, your son sold you to dangerous people? Why would he borrow that much? Mike hesitated. Gambling, online poker, crypto trading, lost everything. Plus Brittany's medical bills elective surgery insurance wouldn't cover. They're drowning. Instead of asking me for help, they decided to take it. Another pause. Frank, there's more. According to my source inside Apex, they sent someone to evaluate the collateral yesterday. Someone's been watching your ranch, taking photos, making sure it's worth $340,000. I looked out the window. The ranch sat dark and quiet. Frank, you need protection. These people don't negotiate. What do they usually do? Mike's voice went flat. They make the collateral available by removing obstacles. I'm the obstacle. Yes? In 2 days, if Dylan doesn't pay, they'll come for you. And they won't just ask you to sign papers. What should I do? Call the FBI. Call the local sheriff. Get protection. Or I could give them what they want. You mean Dylan. With evidence. With a confession. With everything. Frank, these people want the ranch. But if Dylan's in FBI custody, the collateral becomes invalid. The loan fraud gets exposed. Apex gets investigated. They lose everything. You're talking about setting up your own son. I'm talking about stopping him before he kills me. Mike gave me 2 phone numbers, one for the FBI, one for a safe house if I needed to run. I wrote them down, thanked him, and hung up. Then I stared at those numbers for a long time. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I wasn't running. I was fighting. Friday morning, I went shopping. Not for groceries, not for feed, not for anything a man my age should be buying at 8 in the morning. I drove toward Billings with a single-purpose camera as a recorder and a cheap laptop no one but me could ever access. And before the sun went down, I needed to make a phone call that would change everything, one that might save my life, or force the confrontation I'd been avoiding. Either way, by nightfall, there would be no turning back. At 8 sharp, I pulled onto the highway and headed east. I skipped Bozeman entirely. Small towns have fast-moving gossip, and I couldn't afford curious eyes. Billings offered anonymity. Best Buy had just opened when I walked in. A young clerk approached as I studied the security aisle. Setting up a system, sir, he asked. Something like that, I said, paying in cash for 4 Blink Mini cameras and a no-frills laptop. No accounts, no cloud, nothing traceable. Back home, I installed the cameras over 3 slow, deliberate hours. The first went in the living room, hidden between Linda's old hardbacks. The second hid behind the kitchen wall clock's face. The third disappeared inside a wooden birdhouse overlooking the porch. The fourth I tucked behind a framed photo of Linda in my office. All 4 streamed only to the new laptop. The compromised one Dylan had touched stayed shut. When everything came online, I checked each angle. Not a single blind spot. At 1 in the afternoon, I called Thomas Way. Thomas, if I record my son admitting what he's done, is it admissible Montana is a one-party consent state, he said. You need him to say 3 things he installed the tracker, he knew what it could do, and he intended to use your property. That proves fraud, attempted homicide, and elder exploitation. I wrote the 3 points in my notebook, my hand unsteady. At 2, I called the number Mike Patterson gave me. FBI Billings Field Office, this is Agent Martinez. My name is Frank Morrison, I said. My son is trying to kill me, and he's tied to Apex Investment Solutions. A pause. Mr. Morrison, how do you know about Apex? Because they're holding a fraudulent loan in my name. My son used my ranch as collateral. Can you come into the office? She asked. I can't, I said. But you can come here. Tomorrow morning I'll have a recorded confession. Can you place agents at my ranch at 10 a.m. Saturday? Sir, that isn't typically. He installed a kill switch on my truck. He forged legal documents. Apex comes for me in 2 days. You can be here tomorrow, or arrive Sunday to collect my body. I hung up before she could answer. The phone rang instantly. Mr. Morrison Martinez said, I need all the details you have. For 30 minutes, I gave her everything, the tracker, the spyware forged, signatures, the loan, the timeline. When I finished, she said, I'll send 2 agents. They'll stay hidden. But if things turn dangerous, it won't, I said. Face to face, he's still my son. At 4, I practiced my questions in the mirror. Gentle at first, tightening steadily until the truth had nowhere left to hide. At 6, I called Dylan. 9 a.m. Tomorrow, I said. Just you and me. His voice trembled. About what, Dad? About what you've done? I hung up before he could protest. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the 4 camera feeds glowing on the laptop, the ranch silent around me. Tomorrow he would face what he'd become. And at 8:55 a.m., Saturday, when I heard his truck crunch on the gravel, I checked the cameras one last time. Agent Martinez and Agent Harper were already hidden in the kitchen. I stood, steadied myself, and walked toward the front door. It was time. Dylan knocked 3 times. Soft, hesitant. Like when he was a kid and had broken something. Brittany stood beside him, uninvited. I should have known she'd come. I opened the door. I said, just you. Brittany's chin lifted. Family business. I should be here. I stepped aside. They sat on the sofa. I took the chair across from them, the cameras capturing every angle. Coffee. No. Dylan's voice cracked. Dad, what's this about? I found something under my truck. I let the words sit there. GPS tracker. Professional installation. Someone who knows trucks. Complete silence. Dylan's face went white. Brittany's hand tightened on her purse. You taught me to change oil when you were 16, Dylan. You've been under that F-150 before. Brittany started to speak. Frank, why would Dylan? $340,000, I said. That's why. Dylan made a sound like all the air had left his lungs. You owe money. To Apex Investment Solutions. Dad, how did you... His voice broke. Brittany jabbed him hard with her elbow. I know everything, I said. Spyware on my laptop. Forged power of attorney. Loan using my ranch. All of it. Dylan's face crumpled. Dad, they were going to kill us. 15% per month. We couldn't pay. Dylan, shut up, Brittany hissed. Let him talk, I said. The tracker was to keep you safe. Dylan said desperately. To know where you were? Safe? I leaned forward. Or to make sure I signed papers? He hesitated. Both, maybe. I was scared. You put a kill switch on my truck. Dylan went completely still. What? Don't lie. Chuck Morrison identified it. Connects to the engine control unit. Can cut fuel lock, brakes, kill the engine at 70 miles per hour. I didn't know it could do that. Dylan's voice rose, panicked. Brittany said it was just GPS. Brittany stood up. We're leaving. Sit down, or I call the sheriff right now. You can't prove anything. I held up my phone. Photos of the tracker. Screenshots of the spyware. Copies of the forged documents. I can prove everything. Dylan broke completely. Started crying. Dad, please. We didn't want to hurt you. We needed the ranch. Temporarily. We'd pay you back. After I was dead. No. He was sobbing now. I wasn't going to. I didn't. He didn't know. Brittany shouted. I bought it. It was my idea. She realized what she'd said. Her face went pale. So you're confessing, I said quietly. I know. I turned to Dylan. Did you install the tracker? He was crying too hard to speak at first. Yes, but I didn't think. Did you access my computer? Yes. Did you forge my signature? Brittany did it, but I knew about it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad. I looked at my son broken and crying on my sofa. I'm sorry, too. Then I said, Agent Martinez, I think you've heard enough. Dylan's head snapped up. What? Martinez stepped out of the kitchen, Agent Harper behind her. They held up their badges. Dylan Morrison, Brittany. Morrison, you're under arrest. Wire fraud. Attempted murder. Elder abuse. Identity theft. Dylan didn't resist. Just kept crying. Dad, please, Brittany screamed. This is bullshit, Frank. Tell them. I said nothing. They led them out in handcuffs. Through the car window, Dylan looked back at me, tears streaming down his face. I didn't wave. The house felt too quiet after they left. Martinez took my statement. Dylan and Brittany would be arraigned Monday. I had gotten justice, but it didn't feel like winning. It just felt empty. 6 months. That's how long it took for justice to run its course. 6 months for winter to pass, for snow to melt, for something like peace to return. I sat on my porch that spring morning with Scout beside me, a 4-month-old border collie I'd adopted 3 months back. In my hand was Dylan's 5th letter. The first 4 sat unopened in my desk. This one felt different. I thought back to January. Dylan had stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit 20 pounds thinner. When the judge said 8 years federal prison, 3 years supervised release, Dylan's shoulders sagged, but he nodded. His eyes found mine. I didn't look away. I didn't smile either. Brittany had fought her charges, claimed innocence. The jury disagreed. 5 years plus $100,000 fine. She'd screamed at me leaving the courtroom. "This is your fault." The FBI raided Apex Investment 2 weeks later. 12 arrests. Dylan's testimony helped. My ranch was locked in an irrevocable trust now. Safe. Scout barked at a butterfly. Life had found rhythm again. Jim came by twice a week. Robert Mitchell handled the legal work. The nightmares mostly stopped. I didn't check under my truck anymore. I'd joined an elder abuse support group. Gave talks at senior centers about warning signs. 3 families reached out afterward. I'd helped them see the patterns. It felt good to be useful instead of just a victim. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Morrison William Hayes from Boise. I found your number through an elder abuse forum. I found something under my car. GPS tracker. Missing documents. His daughter asking about power of attorney. I knew this story. William, don't panic. Document everything. Get a lawyer. Check your computer for spyware. Don't confront anyone yet. Why help me? You don't know me. I looked at Scout at my ranch. 6 months ago, I was where you are. You're not crazy. Protect yourself. It's not selfish. It's survival. We talked 10 more minutes. I gave him Mitchell's number. When I hung up, I felt lighter. I opened Dylan's letter. His handwriting shook. "Dad, I don't expect forgiveness. Prison is hard, but I need to be here. Therapy helps. I understand what I did. You didn't fail me. I failed myself. You were right to turn me in. It saved my life. I love you. Dylan." I read it twice, folded it, didn't call him. Maybe someday, not today. Scout nudged my hand. "At least you're loyal, boy." The Montana sky stretched endless and blue. I thought about William fighting the same fight. Dylan in prison, hopefully becoming better. Myself at 68, alone but alive and free. People ask if I regret turning in my son. The answer is no. The alternative was letting him kill me. They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned self-preservation is thicker than blood. That's not selfish. That's survival. I kept Dylan's letter, not because I forgave him, but because maybe years from now there might be a chance. Not for what we had that's gone, but for something honest, or maybe not. Maybe some breaks can't be fixed. Either way, I'll be here, on my ranch, with my dog, living my life, because that's what I fought for. Not revenge, not punishment, just the right to keep living, on my terms, free. Looking back at this true story, I realize the lessons I learned came too late. If you're listening to grandpa stories like mine, hoping you'll never face betrayal from your own family, let me give you advice. Don't wait like I did. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. That tracker, those helpful visits the Wi-Fi set up, my gut knew. I just didn't want to believe my son could betray me. Don't ignore the warning signs. Protect yourself first. People say I was cruel, turning in my own blood. But the Bible says in Proverbs, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. God gave us wisdom for survival. Self-preservation isn't selfish when someone's trying to kill you. Document everything. Screenshots, photos, dates, times. Evidence saved my life. Without proof, it would have been my word against his. This true story isn't unique. Elder abuse is everywhere now. If you hear grandpa stories about families exploiting their own for money, believe them. It happens more than people think. Every true story like mine is a warning to others. I'm alive because I chose survival over sentiment. Blood may be thicker than water, but self-preservation is thicker than blood. If these grandpa stories resonated with you, or you know someone facing similar struggles, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Share this story with your family. It could save someone's life. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss true stories that matter. Your support helps these crucial messages reach those who need them most. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment in the story has touched your heart, brought you some reflection, some emotion, and hope. Thank you for taking the time to experience it with us, and hope that each next story will always accompany you on your life journey.